Chapter 41. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Demon. Hunting Team, 3, Translator. 549690339. Li Hao silently nodded. Seeing this, Wang Jie didn't say anything. He actually quite liked Li Hao. However, this was his goal in coming to the inspection office, so he couldn't persuade him any further. The self-immolation case is over. If you still want to come back, you can write a report. You're always welcome to come back. Thank you, Chief. Li Hao thanked him, and Wang Jie said with a smile, "You're welcome. Go and report to the law enforcement team first and see when they will officially transfer people. When the transfer order is given, organize a farewell party in the confidential room." "Thank you, Chief." Li Hao thanked them again. Everyone had been nice to him in the critical room. In fact, if it wasn't for the situation, he would have thought that staying in the importance room was a good choice. When Li Hao left the office, he didn't tell anyone that he was going to be transferred. Li Hao didn't pack anything. After saying goodbye to Chen Na, he went out for a while and quickly headed to the law enforcement team. The law enforcement team and the confidential room were both at the inspection office headquarters. However, they were not in the same building. The computer room was in the office behind the patrol hall, while the law enforcement team was in the building next to it. The entire building was the territory of the law enforcement team, which was much more luxurious than the computer room. Li Hao, who was wearing an inspector's uniform, walked to the entrance of the law enforcement building. No one stopped him. At the entrance of the building, the members of the law enforcement team were coming and going, each and every one of them looking very tough. Compared to them, Li Hao seemed to be a little thin and unremarkable. Li Hao didn't ask anyone and went upstairs. He went to look for Lu Yan. Lu Yan was the vice-captain of the law enforcement team and had her own office on the 6th floor. Soon, Li Hao reached the 6th floor. There weren't many people on the 6th floor, only some leaders' offices. After looking around and finding the name plate, Li Hao knocked on the door of an office. "Come in." Lu Yan's voice didn't sound as flirtatious as last night's. Instead, it was a little cold. When Li Hao pushed the door open and entered, Lu Yan's tone changed. She said with a smile, "Oh, little Li Hao, you're here. It seems that you didn't sleep well last night and missed your sister so early in the morning." "Good morning, Captain Lu." Li Hao saluted and remained unmoved. He was very well behaved. She was flirtatious but not attractive to him. Moreover, danger was lurking everywhere. He wasn't interested in admiring this person's charm. Not to mention, this Captain Lu wasn't simple and was in cahoots with Lu Long. Li Hao didn't want to find trouble for himself. "Little Li Hao, why are you being so serious?" Lu Yan smiled like a flower, while Li Hao stood straight and glanced at her office. He was secretly shocked. The office was huge. It didn't feel like it was smaller than the computer room's office area. It was at least 100 to 200 square meters. That wasn't the main point. It was normal for the law enforcement team to be generous, but what was abnormal was that Li Hao saw some weapons of mass destruction placed in the office. What was the third generation of the Vortex? Such a small pistol was trash. Storm 1. Li Hao had heard of this before. It was an extremely destructive assault gun that could fire 300 rounds at a time. The Eagle Eye 4 was the most advanced sniper gun with an accurate range of more than 500 meters, and its actual killing range was even larger. Armor-breaking second generation, it was said that it could directly penetrate steel. This wasn't an office, this was an armory. Li Hao was shocked. Lu Yan seemed to have noticed the change in his expression and immediately laughed. "Little Li Hao, don't be surprised. These are just models. I'm just playing with them. They're not real." Li Hao was speechless. "Do you think I'll believe you?" "Model." The metallic texture emitted a cold metallic light. "Was this a model? Do you think I'm blind?" The law enforcement team was really something. Lu Yan actually placed these weapons of mass destruction in her office in such a grand manner. It really is a model. Lu Yan laughed. Suddenly, she picked up a black grenade and threw it at Li Hao. I'm just playing. It'll be fine. Li Hao's expression changed, and he hurriedly took it. Cold sweat could be seen on his forehead. F***ck. It won't explode, right? Don't be afraid. Lu Yan approached him and chuckled. Seeing Li Hao reach out to take the grenade and pull the pin, she chuckled and said, I'm fine. The bolt wasn't pulled. What happened? Li Hao's scalp went numb. Are you crazy? She actually pulled the bolt. At this moment, Li Hao wanted to escape. Fortunately, Lu Yan quickly smiled and took the grenade, throwing it out of the window. I'm really fine, it's fake. Boom. A loud sound was heard, and the room shook. Li Hao's face turned pale. Fake. Also, is this woman crazy? You threw her down and she even exploded. This is still fine. Lu Yan, however, had been staring at him. Seeing Li Hao's face turn pale, she suddenly stopped smiling and said calmly, Little Li Hao, you can't do that. What? You're already scared. Lu Yan returned to her seat and leaned back in her chair. She placed her feet on the office table and said lazily, this thing can't compare to supers. Some people could casually cast a small fireball and its power might be greater than this. If you are not careful, you will die. If you're afraid of a grenade's explosion, you're too timid. How can you join us? Li Hao furrowed his brows slightly, but they quickly relaxed. I don't understand any of this. I'm just an ordinary person. Even if I really join the law enforcement team, I might not have to deal with these people. Captain Lu, I should be afraid. I'll be more used to it after a few more times. Chapter 42. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Demon.hunting team, 4, translator. 549690339, is that so? Lu Yan laughed, you're so timid, but that's different from what boss said. He said you're very bold. In fact, I also think that you're quite courageous. If you're really a coward, you know that the self-immolation case isn't simple, but you still dare to continue investigating it. There are some things that I have to do. Li Hao also regained his calm, you know that there are tigers in the mountain, but you're still going to the Tiger Mountain. Just like you, Captain Lu, you know that supers are not easy to deal with, but you still provoke them. Are you not afraid? I think that everyone is afraid, but sometimes, we have to do it. That makes sense. Lu Yan nodded in agreement and laughed again. That's right, everyone is afraid, I'm afraid too, boss is actually afraid too. Just because we're scary doesn't mean we'll give up. She looked at Li Hao. I don't think you'll be of any help to us, but since boss said so, then I welcome you to the law enforcement team. This isn't important. What's important is that I welcome you to the demon hunting squad. Demon hunting. Li Hao's eyes flickered. Was this the name of their team? Seeing Lu Yan's outstretched hand, Li Hao reached out to shake it. As soon as they made contact, Li Hao's heart skipped a beat. The next moment, Lu Yan exerted force on her wrist and grabbed Li Hao's right hand. With a twist of her hand, before Li Hao could react, Lu Yan threw him over her shoulder. With a bang, Li Hao fell heavily to the ground. The moment he fell to the ground, Li Hao quickly jumped up. He had practiced the ape art for 3 years, and it was somewhat effective. Li Hao endured the pain and jumped out of Lu Yan's attack range. Lu Yan didn't attack again and just watched quietly. With a hint of admiration, he teased, not bad. Although his vigilance was a little weak and his skills were average, his reaction speed was still okay. This was the ape technique from the new book of 5 birds, right? You've trained quite well. Li Hao was silent and alert. He was also shocked. This woman looked weak, but when she grabbed his arm, he felt that her hand was as hard as steel. Li Hao didn't need to look to know that his arm was swollen. He had great strength. He felt like he was being held by steel. I'm just testing your skills, don't be afraid. Lu Yen smiled flirtatiously and returned to her previous appearance. Li Hao, on the other hand, didn't dare to be careless. It's a good thing that you have the foundation of the 5 birds technique. The ape technique is not good at attacking, but it's good at escaping. If you can practice it to your teacher's level, even ordinary supers might not be able to catch up to you. Hearing this, Li Hao's eyes flickered. He thought for a moment, then said in a low voice, Captain Lu, you mean? My teacher's ape art is very strong. What? Lu Yen was stunned for a moment. In the next moment, she laughed so hard that her body swayed back and forth. Who wrote the new book of 5 birds? It was made up by old Yuan. You suspect that the creator of the new book of 5 birds isn't strong in the 5 birds technique. Lu Yen laughed for a while before suddenly stopping. Your teacher, Yuan Shua, may not be a superhuman, but back when superpowers were not around, he was a top-tier master in the mortal realm. However, when superpowers appear, if you don't enter the realm of superpowers. Sigh. He sighed, not knowing if it was for Yuan Shua or for himself. So what if the mortal's martial arts were profound? No matter how good one's skills were, they might not be able to block a fireball, a flash of blade light, or a flash of lightning from a super. This was a tragedy. However, Lu Yen quickly sobered up. She retracted her smile and walked out. Let's go and find the boss. We can also let you understand what we're doing and what you should do. You should have some understanding of the enemy and yourself. We don't expect you to do anything, just don't drag us down. Li Hao's heart started beating. Superpower. Perhaps, he could learn more about superpowers from Lu Long. This would be his first step towards becoming a superpower. These people dared to attack supers, so they must have a good understanding of supers. This was another important reason why Li Hao wanted to join the law enforcement team. Only by understanding his opponent could he better deal with the Red Shadow. Chapter 43. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I feel like I'm very strong. Translator 549690339. Lu Yen didn't bring Li Hao to Lu Long's office. Instead, he turned left and right and finally entered the basement of the law enforcement building, which was an underground area that no one else could enter. The place was very big. As soon as Li Hao entered, he felt that it was a little empty, but it was very quiet. It was so quiet that it was a little scary. If it could make one's hair stand on end in the law enforcement building, this place was obviously not ordinary. At the entrance area, there was a large number of training equipment. Just like Lu Yan's office, a large number of weapons were hanging on the wall. There were both hot and cold weapons. Blades, spears, swords, halberds, everything was present. As for hot weapons, Li Hao even saw a small cannon. Li Hao's scalp went numb. My God, how many weapons did these guys have? The law enforcement team had an advantage. Even if Lu Long's place was found, it would not matter. He was the captain of the law enforcement team, the boss of the Blizzard Silver City's violent organization. If he said that these weapons were used to deal with criminals, no one would be able to find any fault with it. If Li Hao dared to hoard so many weapons, he would have been captured and shot to death long ago. In front of the fitness area and the weapons warehouse, there was a small passage that seemed to lead to other areas. Lu Yen didn't bring Li Hao in. Upon entering the fitness area, Lu Yen shouted, "Boss, they're here." A moment later, a few figures walked out from the depths. Lu Long was tall and strong, Wu Chao was as thin as a bamboo pole, a man so fat that he trembled when he walked, and a petite woman who looked kind and was not very old. Including Lu Yen, there were exactly 5 people. This was the demon hunting squad of the law enforcement team. Even though it was very hot in this season, Lu Long still wore a windbreaker, mostly to cover the weapons hanging all over his body. Otherwise, anyone would be able to tell that there was something wrong with him bringing so many weapons out. Lu Long. Lu Long strode over, his face still as cold as before. He introduced himself once more, captain of the demon hunting squad. You're in charge of a frontal assault. BDNVL them Wu Chao, who was thin and weak, also laughed faintly. Wu Chao, scout of the demon hunting team. You're in charge of intelligence gathering and attracting fire from the side. The astonishingly fat man introduced himself with a simple and heavy voice. Chen Jian, the shield guard of the demon hunting squad, in charge of defense. The petite woman's voice was also very gentle. Yun Yao, the doctor of the demon hunting team. She will be in charge of the treatment. 4 people with different positions and different functions. The division of labor was very clear. Although there were few people, they had all the vital organs. Li Hao glanced at Lu Yen. What was she in charge of? Lu Yen smiled sweetly. When she saw Li Hao looking at her, she said, "What are you looking at?" Lu Yen, the vice-captain and vice-attacker of the demon hunting squad. Boss is the main attacker, I'll be responsible for the last hit. Li Hao understood. Lu Long looked at Li Hao and calmly said, "We are all members of the demon hunting squad. There were more people in the past, but now there's a lot less. It's just the few of us. Now, the team only has 2 main and deputy attackers, 1 doctor, 1 shield defender, and 1 scout each." "Li Hao, are you willing to join us?" he asked in a deep voice. Li Hao nodded. Lu Long looked at him deeply. "Li Hao, do you know why we are called the demon hunting squad?" Li Hao didn't say anything. Lu Long answered his own question, "Because we are justice." Justice. At this moment, Li Hao was even a little dazed. He looked at the people in front of him. "Are we justice?" Lu Long's voice was cold and unquestionable. "We are justice. Perhaps we have our own goals and thoughts, but don't forget that we're the law enforcement team of the inspection office. We're a law enforcement agency, we uphold justice, we protect the Silver City. Everything we do, on one hand, it's to protect ourselves, to strengthen ourselves, on the other hand, it's to maintain peace. The demons we've hunted are all those who disturb the mortal world and have blood on their hands. Li Hao, the first thing you have to do after joining us is forget everything else. Remember, we are justice. And those supers who made mistakes are demons. It's just that the Night Watchers can't clean them up, so we're in charge of cleaning up the filth." The moment he joined the demon hunting squad, Lu Long began to instill the mission of the squad into Li Hao. Or rather, this was the badge of a demon hunting squad. A small team with their own plans was extremely dangerous to them, because the enemies they were dealing with were beyond their imagination. Therefore, this small team actually had their own beliefs. Justice. Regardless of whether it was true or not, they believed that they were the messengers of justice and were driving away the demons for the Silver City. Justice. Li Hao muttered. "That's right." Lu Long's voice was extremely serious. Justice. Li Hao, remember this. The demon hunting squad was the guardian of the Silver City. Without us, the Silver City would have suffered countless casualties and become the backyard of many supers. Of course, you may not believe it now. However, go out and take a look. This vast world, with hundreds and thousands of cities, is in chaos except for the central region. The chaotic world has come, and human lives are like ants. The appearance of a transcendent could cause chaos in a city. My Silver City had been living in peace for the past few years. Although there were riots, it had been peaceful. The demon hunting squad has been established for 5 years and has killed 5 supers, 1 per year. Every time, they are saving the Silver City. Chapter 44. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I think I'm very strong. Translator. 549690339. Lu Yen stood beside Li Hao with her arms crossed. She smiled and said, "Boss is right. Although boss likes to brag, his words are true. We joined the demon hunting squad for our own reasons. Maybe our original purpose wasn't to protect anyone, but that's the truth. Because of our existence, the Silver City can live and work in peace." Li Hao was deep in thought. Perhaps, what Lu Long said wasn't wrong. They might have hunted down the supers to make themselves transcendent, but in fact, they might have also hunted down some supers who were preparing to wreak havoc in the Silver City. Was it very chaotic outside? Li Hao didn't know. He had almost never left Silver City. He had been to the neighboring city once, but that was many years ago. "Li Hao, this is the first lesson I've taught you since you joined the team." Lu Long's tone was menacing. "Don't think that we're ghosts who act in the dark. Wrong, we're law enforcement officers. We're messengers who uphold justice. Therefore, to us, anyone who makes a mistake is a devil. Demon hunt, we hunt these demons." Li Hao suddenly felt relieved. Even though Lu Long's words were somewhat self-praising and had the meaning of a strategy. However, when Lu Long said that they were the true justice and the true enforcers, Li Hao suddenly felt very comfortable. He just felt comfortable for some reason. We're not sinister people who act in the dark. We're the guardians of the entire city. Although this might not be our original intention, the truth is here. An expert. At this moment, Li Hao felt even more strongly that Lu Long was an expert. Not only was his strength and mind top-notch, but the other party was also very good at guiding his thoughts. He made every member of the demon hunting squad believe that everything they did was for justice. No sense of guilt. Killing supers would only make one feel accomplished. It was to protect the people, to protect justice, and to protect the Silver City. This kind of psychological satisfaction was not something an ordinary leader could achieve. As for Lu Long, he actually had some achievements in this area. At this moment, Li Hao felt that joining a demon hunting squad might be a good choice. At this moment, Lu Long said in a deep voice, "Li Hao, introduce yourself." Li Hao thought for a moment, then said, "I'm Li Hao, the Chief Patrol Officer of the Original Intelligence Office. I'm an expelled student from the Silver City Ancient Academy. I'm skilled in the ape technique of the 5 birds technique, and my movements are more agile." "No more." Lu Long looked at him. Li Hao was a little embarrassed. "No, just like that, you've become Yuan Shua's last disciple." Lu Long said coldly. "That's teacher's favor," Li Hao said, a little embarrassed. "Li Hao, if you don't have enough value here, we won't give up on you when you're in danger, but we won't risk our lives to save you. If you have enough value, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will still let you live. Let our beliefs continue." Li Hao was silent for a while, then added, "I'm also good at deciphering ancient texts. In the exploration of ancient civilizations, deciphering ancient texts is an important part. My memory is very good, and this is one of my strengths." The few of them looked at each other with strange expressions. Ancient text analysis. Would it work? There was. It was very useful. Yuan Shua's current status was high because he was the head of the Ancient Civilization Exploration Department. His identity was not the key. The key was that Yuan Shua was also an expert in ancient civilization and had a deep understanding of ancient civilization. Therefore, even the night patrollers relied on him a lot. However, the night watchmen did not dare to let Yuan Shua become a super, because once Yuan Shua became a super, a lot of trouble would happen. There were some things that were useless to ordinary people, but they were very useful to supers. However, supers often did not have enough knowledge and insight to identify things that were useful to them. Yuan Shua could do it. An ordinary person like Yuan Shua would not dare to keep it for himself. However, once Yuan Shua became a superhuman, he might not be able to control himself. Once he found some treasures, he might take them for himself without anyone knowing. At this moment, Lu Long's eyes slightly lit up. How much of Yuan Shua's true inheritance did you obtain? Li Hao said humbly, Captain, you overestimate me. My teacher's knowledge is as vast as the ocean. I'm just absorbing a drop of it. Speak human language. Li Hao had no choice but to say, I only followed my teacher for 2 years in the ancient academy. I mainly studied. I didn't participate in any practical activities. Teacher is good at too many things. Right now, I'm only studying the analysis of ancient characters. Other abilities are far inferior to teacher's. Teacher is good at too many things, such as trap cracking, antique preservation, feng shui positioning, ancient civilization and culture. Speaking of Yuan Shua, Li Hao was also full of emotion. He sighed and said, after I left the ancient academy, I was busy with other things and didn't have the time to study. Teacher's abilities, I really can't catch up to you. Lu Long said in a deep voice, it's already very good. To be able to catch Yuan Shua's eye, it means that you have talent and ability. Ancient language analysis. He didn't say more about this and quickly said, very well then. Li Hao, from today on, you are the intelligence analyst of the demon hunting squad and the bait. There was silence. Bait can also be a part-time job. On the side, Wu Chao smiled faintly. His smile was always so ghostly and a little cold. Little friend, it seems that I can be liberated. Before this, after the previous bait of the demon hunting squad died, I had always been the one to take over the position. I was really afraid that I would die one day, but now it seems someone has taken over the position. Chapter 45. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I think I'm very strong. Translator 549690339. It turned out that he was the previous generation. Li Hao was also speechless. Of course, before he came, Lu Long had already made it clear that he was the bait. However, it was now officially confirmed. The next moment, Lu Long looked at Li Hao and said with a slight frown, of course, I asked you to be the bait, not to send you to your death. Your strength doesn't seem to be much with that body of yours. Even if you've cultivated the ape arts, you won't have much of an impact in such a short time. Then, he walked towards the fitness equipment. Come, let's test your abilities. Let me have an idea of how I'm going to train you next. At the same time, I'll see if you have the confidence to escape from the hands of supers. Experiment. Li Hao didn't say anything and followed him. The others were also very curious and followed him. Lu Yan's mouth was almost touching Li Hao's ear. She softly laughed and said, show me all you've got, don't hide. You're too weak, so there's no need to hide it. Hiding your strength will only make your harvest small. Boss still has some good things on hand. Li Hao didn't say anything. He just avoided the other party's mouth. Don't blow into my ears. It's uncomfortable. Giggle. Lu Yan laughed happily. In front of them, Lu Long didn't care about this. The other female member, the doctor, Yin Yao, chuckled and said, Sister Yen, stop teasing him. Who's teasing him? Lu Yan smiled like a flower. Little Hao is so good. Looking. Look at our team. They're ugly. He was as thin as a bamboo pole and as fat as a wall. The captain was still alright, but not only was he old, his skin was also dark, like a black coal ball. Little Hao is still the prettiest. The other 3 men's footsteps slowed down. No one said anything. However, Li Hao felt that he was innocent. He seemed to have offended 3 people at once. I didn't say any of that. It was Lu Yan who said it, so don't hold a grudge against me. At this moment, everyone had already arrived at the fitness area. All kinds of equipment. Lu Long didn't care about what had just happened, and his voice remained the same. Before entering the transcendent realm, humans also have powerful cultivators. For example, your teacher Yuan Shua has cultivated the 5 birds technique to the extreme, and his combat power is extremely strong. For example, the previous patrol secretary wore an iron cloth armor and cultivated it to the extreme. Ordinary swords can't penetrate it, and firearms can only leave some external injuries. These people are all in the mortal realm. They are the representatives of a divine technique that has been cultivated to the extreme. Before the appearance of transcendence, we called these people martial masters. He's a martial arts master and a grandmaster. He's the representative of a mortal body that can resist firearms. A martial master. Li Hao listened carefully. These were all areas he had never been involved in before. Lu Long continued, there are also strong and weak martial masters. Of course, most of the time, it's not just a matter of strength. Some are skilled in speed, some are skilled in defense, some are skilled in strength. Everyone has their own strengths, so naturally, it's not good to put them together and distinguish them. The faster one might be able to kill the stronger but slower martial master. The stronger one can also kill the faster martial master with one punch. As a martial master, you must have an outstanding ability that surpasses ordinary people. Only then can you be called a martial master. Speed and strength are the most intuitive manifestations. As for other aspects, such as defensive ability, such as Qin Jian's, it is difficult to measure how good he is until it is a life and death moment. Li Hao nodded again. This was the logic. He looked at Lu Long and asked curiously, Captain, are you saying that it's difficult to distinguish between the strong and the weak? Therefore, all martial masters are similar. Nonsense. Li Hao was speechless. You said so. Lu Long turned to look at him, don't think too much. The strong are strong, and the weak are weak. Therefore, more than 10 years ago, martial masters were also divided into strong and weak, but there were not many levels. They were 10./100. Breakthrough, and 1000. Combat. This is a martial master. Li Hao was slightly stunned. This was too intuitive. It was too simple. Lu Long seemed to know what he meant and coldly said, you understand it immediately, right? He was just this direct. The people here referred to the standard of the soldiers in the regular army. The most basic requirement for anyone who could be called a martial master was to be able to break through a 10-man team and kill them. This was the standard of killing 10. If you can defeat an army of 100 with a single strike, you are an expert who has surpassed 100. As for Qian warrior. Lu Long took a deep breath. That's only in theory. In reality, no matter how strong you are, you'll still die if you encounter an army of 1,000 people, even without firearms. Your physical strength and mental strength will be rapidly consumed in battle. No matter how strong you are, there is a limit. You can't possibly achieve 1,000-man move. It wasn't until the appearance of supers that some powerful supers were truly equipped with the ability of 1,000-man fighting machine. Li Hao was slightly dazed. He asked, Captain, do you mean that only powerful supers can do this? Does that mean that some weak supers can only kill 10 or break 100? Also. Lu Long looked at him and said with a mocking tone, just. You'll know when you try. Breaking 100, 1 against 100. His speed and strength had both reached an extreme. This kind of superhuman also had some special abilities. Even if there were more than 100 martial masters, they would still have a slim chance of survival if they encountered this superhuman. Do you think it's weak? Li Hao didn't say anything. Breaking 100. It didn't sound difficult, but in fact, there was really a 100-man team on the other side, all of which were powerful soldiers. Li Hao would probably be hammered to death as soon as he charged in. Chapter 46. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I feel like I'm very strong translator. 549690339. At this moment, Li Hao was very curious about Lu Long's strength. Then the captain has the strength of over 100. Lu Long's face was indifferent, and Lu Yen continued with a smile, I guess so, barely. If the boss is not strong, how can he lead us to kill supers? Supers are still very strong. Even the weakest one has the strength of over 100, and they are more difficult to deal with. This time, Li Hao clearly knew how strong his captain was. Of course, he only knew what it meant literally. As for how powerful it was in reality, he really didn't have any direct experience. Breaking 100 didn't sound like much. What about Teacher Yuan? Your teacher probably had over 100 combat power at his peak, but now he's old and weak. His physical strength and speed are declining. I'm afraid he won't be able to do it. Lu Long shook his head slightly. Back then, a portion of the top-notch martial masters had reached this level. However, in the past few years, as firearms became more powerful and superpowers appeared, everyone pursued superpowers. Very few people would put in the effort to cultivate these ordinary martial arts anymore. With the introduction of the mysterious energy, one will be able to reach the sky in a single step. His physique will be strong and his physical abilities will be strengthened. He might be an ordinary person, but after a day, he might be comparable to a martial master who has slashed 10 times. After some time, he will become a martial Dao grandmaster who has slashed over 100. Tell me, how many people are still willing to practice ancient martial arts? He looked at Li Hao and sighed. Superpowers are to break the limits of the human body. They allow humans to break through their limits and increase their upper limits infinitely. Even a wooden bucket with a little water can contain more water than a wine glass. And the ordinary martial masters were the wine cups. Superpowers were like wooden barrels. Do you understand? Li Hao nodded in understanding. It was indeed very despairing. If a normal martial artist could not absorb the mysterious energy and become a super, they would not be able to break through their limits even if they trained for their entire lives. If they could not even defeat a beginner super after years of hard work, how despairing would that be? Yuan Shuo, for example, had been practicing martial arts at a young age. Now that he was over 70, his physical strength was declining. He had been a leader in the martial arts world, but the result was good. He had broken through 100 in the past, but now he might only have the strength to slash 10. This kind of strength was only at the beginner level among supers. A 70-year-old grandmaster could only be compared to some young people who had just entered the sect. No wonder when he was practicing the 5 birds technique, Teacher Yuan had only said that he would have an additional life-saving ability to strengthen his body. He had never said that this was a killing technique. Because the reality was too despairing. As for Lu Long, he gave a simple introduction and quickly said, "Go and try. I'll observe your speed and strength to see what you're capable of." Li Hao didn't say anything else. He didn't hide it and there was no need to. With his basic ape art skills, he was afraid that these few people really didn't care about him. In the arena, Li Hao was like a monkey, jumping and rolling around the entire fitness area. From time to time, he would use his monkey fist and hit some sandbags, causing them to bounce out. Outside the stadium, Lu Long observed silently. The thin and weak Wu Chao looked at it for a moment before shaking his head lightly. He's stronger than most people and he's on par with some of the old patrol officers in the team. But, boss, can he escape from the pursuit of a superpower? The chubby Chen Jian also said gloomily, I definitely don't have the level to cut 10. At most, I'll cut 2 and 3. This is the first time our demon hunting squad has recruited such a weak guy in all these years, right? If he encountered 2 or 3 soldiers, Li Hao's abilities might be of some use and he could kill them. However, the difference between 2 or 3 and 10 was not 3 or 4 times, but more than 10 times the difficulty. In their eyes, Li Hao was too weak. Lu Yen crossed her arms and looked at it for a while. She smiled and said, "Keep him. It's not bad to look at him. He can also do some logistics or intelligence analysis. He's a civil servant, not a warrior like you." Li Hao was a civilian staff, so he should have been prepared. Lu Yen didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Everyone thought about it and felt that it made sense. Lu Yen continued, "Get some firearms. Is slashing 10 very powerful? With one shot, he would still be killed. Of course, once you've broken through 100, be it a martial master or a superhuman, it'll be hard to deal with them." The main thing was that it was difficult to lock onto a target. Once you saw someone, your brain would issue an order. The next moment, the other party would appear in front of you and kill you with a single slap. Then, no matter how strong the weapon was, it would be useless. In fact, firearms still possessed extremely powerful killing power. If there was someone holding him back, it was not impossible for him to be blasted to death if he broke through 100. Lu Long also nodded slightly, he'll definitely carry firearms. Pick some that are easy to use, convenient, and light for him to use. As long as this guy has the brains, it's fine. As for his skills, if he can kill a superpower and introduce some mysterious powers into him, even if he can't become a superpower, it's not difficult for him to break through 10 points in terms of physique and speed. The point is, this guy. He's not just a civilian, he's also an expert in the ancient language. Although he's definitely not as good as Yuan Shua, he's probably enough for us. The moment these words came out, the few of them were deep in thought. Li Hao was still quite useful. Joining a demon hunting team seemed like a good idea. At this moment, Li Hao, who was jumping at high speed, felt that he was not bad. At least, he was much stronger than before. When he left the field, panting, he said with some anticipation, "Captain, do you think there's a difference between me and a martial master who has cut 10? Can it be counted as breaking 10? He felt that he had the chance to fight 10 people by himself. As for Lu Long, he hesitated for a moment and was also a little embarrassed. He was unable to reply for a long time. Where did this kid's confidence come from? 10 cuts, that's it. As for the others, they also looked at each other in dismay. Humans indeed did not know their own limits. Cut 10. You should wash up and go to sleep. Li Hao also gradually sensed that something was wrong. After a while, he said, somewhat embarrassed, 9 beheading. The few of them didn't say anything. Cut 5. It was still silent. Li Hao's expression changed. It can't be, right? After drinking the sword water, I thought I was already very powerful and could even fight with Teacher Yuan. But Teacher Yuan's power is over 100, so I can't be that much weaker, right? Teacher Yuan can make 5 rounds with her ape art. If she can make a 10-minute round trip, I can also make a 9-minute round trip. After a long time, Lu Long broke the silence, don't think too much. I'm not afraid of weakness. I'm afraid of laziness. If you do well, you'll only be able to cut 10. There was silence again. Li Hao understood and felt helpless and sad. So I don't even have the ability to cut 5. Then why did I still want to kill the Red Shadow? F***ck, the ignorant are really fearless. Chapter 47. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The Superpower Territory, 1, Translator. 549690339, is beheading 10 very strong? In the basement, Li Hao was still in disbelief. Beheading 10 really didn't sound like much. 1 against 10, it didn't feel that exaggerated, right? As far as he knew, some old patrol inspectors seemed to be able to do it. Is he very strong? Lu Long said coldly and arrogantly, to me, it's naturally very weak. For you, a martial master of the 10 slashing realms can kill several of you without any problem. On the other side, the short Yunyao said softly, Li Hao, don't underestimate any martial master. Beheading 10 directions to become a martial master. If you can break through an army formation of 10 people and kill all of them, that's beheading 10 directions. 1 against 10 and 1 against 1, killing 10 people in a will battle, are two different concepts. It's useless to talk too much to him. Qin Jian, go and teach him what a martial master is. Lu Long said lightly. Me. The big fatty Qin Jian was a little honest, I'm not good at attacking, and I'm very slow. This kid's speed is still okay. They were good at different things. Li Hao's speed was even faster than his, and he was better at defense. Try it. Lu Long frowned slightly. Just play with him. You're good at defense and not at offense. That's to avoid killing him. All right. Hearing this, Li Hao was a little sad. So he had found a shield to test himself, but he was afraid that he would die. However, Li Hao was really tempted. Men all had a competitive heart and a little desire to fight. He didn't know how powerful the fat Qin Jian was, but the other party's physique was so big. Even if he couldn't beat him, if he ran, the other party wouldn't be able to catch him, right? At this moment, Qin Jian's smile was simple and honest. He glanced at Li Hao, who was somewhat eager to try, and said, then let's have a spar. He then added, I'm the weakest in our team, and I'm good for nothing except defense. You've practiced the 5-bird ape technique, so you're quite fast. I might not be able to catch up to you. Li Hao glanced at him. It was fine if he didn't say anything, but now that he did. Li Hao was a little worried. This fatty couldn't be very powerful, right? Qin Jian is the weakest in the team in terms of speed, attack, and breakthrough ability, except for defense. If you're not willing, then let's change it to Wu Chao. Lu Long said impatiently. Li Hao glanced at Wu Chao and shook his head. Forget it. The thin man was obviously very agile, and the other party was a scout in the team, who was smarter than a monkey. Li Hao knew his own situation well. He might not even be able to touch him. Then here I come. Qin Jian took a step forward, his movements very slow. Li Hao didn't say anything else. Just as he activated the art of ape, Qin Jian's fan-like palm slapped over. Without thinking, Li Hao jumped up and retreated. This guy's slap didn't look light. On the other side, Qin Jian slapped Li Hao. Seeing Li Hao jump up, he did not think twice. His movements did not seem fast, but he slightly moved to the right. The next moment, Li Hao's expression changed. His landing point was over there. He didn't fall behind directly. In midair, Li Hao hurriedly leaped into the air to borrow the force of the attack. He kicked his feet in a flurry, without any sense of beauty. Real martial arts didn't have much beauty to it. The ape technique was still fine, but some of the other techniques of the 5 birds technique looked even more silly. They even had to lie on the ground and run on all fours, making them even uglier. On the other hand, Qin Jian's fat face revealed a simple and honest smile, as if he had already guessed it. This was not because his reaction was faster or because of his strength, but because of his experience. If one did not have any experience fighting supers, they would have died long ago. Li Hao kicked randomly, using the air resistance to shift his position. At the same time, Qin Jian was not in a hurry, as if he had casually taken 2 steps. At this moment, Li Hao could no longer borrow force, and fell directly. This time, the landing point was less than a meter in front of Qin Jian. The two sides were practically face to face. The moment Li Hao landed on the ground, he felt the force of the ground and was about to use the force to bounce away. At this moment, he saw a big palm from the corner of his eye. It was the big palm from the beginning. Pa! A crisp sound. Li Hao rolled in the air and fell to the ground with a bang. Qin Jian did not hit his face, but his neck. At this moment, his neck was blood red. At this moment, Li Hao was completely dumbfounded. His neck seemed to be broken. At this moment, he couldn't feel anything. His head was dizzy, and he couldn't even feel anything below his neck. He jumped and used the air as leverage, but he was stunned by a slap. He was completely stunned. As for Chen Jian, he was still simple and honest. At this moment, he looked at his own big palm, then at Li Hao, who was on the ground. He smiled awkwardly and turned to look at Lu Long and the others. I didn't expect his reaction to be so slow," said Jian Jia. "Also, I didn't expect him to jump as soon as he came up. Boss, you said that if you're not strong enough, jumping in the air is suicide. I didn't expect to encounter it today. If one's strength wasn't enough and they jumped into the air, once their path of return was blocked, they would be at the mercy of others. This was a huge taboo in actual combat. Even if there were more than 100 martial masters, unless it was absolutely necessary, they would rarely leap into the air in actual combat. If that happened, all the openings would be exposed, and there would be no chance to counterattack. Being down to earth was something that every martial master had to remember in actual combat. Li Hao, on the other hand, thought that he was faster and more agile after learning the ape art, so he jumped into the air. However, he was immediately stunned. The entire basement was silent. There was only Chen Jian's simple and honest explanation. Chapter 48. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Superpower Realm, 2, Translator. 549690339. Li Hao, on the other hand, had his head lowered and his face flushed red. He, who thought he was smart, had suffered a huge blow today. Li Hao, who thought he was quite strong, was sent flying by a shield guard in his team with a light slap. If he hadn't shown mercy, Li Hao suspected that his neck would have been broken by the other party. Li Hao, who had just thought that he could at least cut 5 or 6 times, had completely given up. At this moment, he seemed to have come to a realization and understood something. I am not a martial master. Strictly speaking, I am just a dabbler who has only practiced martial arts for a few days. I have not had any actual combat experience. In fact, I am just a real noob. He has always overestimated himself. Thinking back to the scene last night, he was still thinking, as long as I draw my gun fast enough, can I kill the red shadow and the person behind the red shadow? Thinking about it now, he was really naive. How childish. The others all looked at Lu Long, then at Li Hao, and revealed strange expressions. Had this guy collapsed from the blow? His mental fortitude seemed to be very poor. Lu Long also frowned slightly. He did have the intention to intimidate Li Hao, but that wasn't the main thing. He wanted Li Hao to understand that the enemy they were facing was far more powerful than he had imagined. But in the end, Li Hao seemed to have lost his confidence after a single spar. At this moment, Li Hao was still lying on the ground. Could it be that he couldn't accept such a failure? Is that all? A hint of disappointment appeared in Lu Long's eyes. He had originally thought that even if Li Hao's strength was lacking, his mind, brain, patience, and bearing ability were all top notch. After all, he had caught Yuan Shuo's eye and was even willing to secretly investigate a year's worth of cases for his friend's sake. He felt that Li Hao was still worth nurturing. But at this moment, Li Hao's life was too smooth. Could such a person withstand the blow? He was thinking. At this moment, Li Hao stood up and rubbed his neck, a hint of shyness on his face. He was like a young boy. In reality, he wasn't old to begin with. If he didn't drop out of school at this time, he would still be a student of the ancient academy. I always feel that I'm different from the rest. I'm smarter than everyone else. To be able to get into the ancient academy, to be accepted by teacher Yuan as a disciple, to be able to successfully enter the inspector's office, to be able to investigate cases. I feel like I'm capable of anything. I feel like I'm doing pretty well in everything. As Li Hao spoke, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. Today, I learned that I'm nothing when I fight. I've only learned the ape arts for 3 years, and I've been slacking off for the past year. How can I compare with you guys? I'm afraid you've been practicing martial arts for many years, right? 16 years. Qin Jian replied honestly. I only started practicing martial arts when I was 12. Li Hao was speechless. It wasn't because he had been practicing martial arts for 16 years, but because the other party was 28. What a joke. You're only 28. At first glance, he thought that Qin Jian was at least 40 years old, but he was only 28 years old. He was speechless. Oh. Li Hao thought to himself, but he didn't say it out loud. He looked helpless. My teacher once said that in practicing martial arts, 1 needs talent and 2 needs hard work. Hard work was more important than talent. I've been practicing martial arts for 16 years. I don't care if I have talent or not, but even if I do, I'm just a lazy person. I'm lucky that I didn't get killed by Brother Chen. Qin Jian laughed embarrassedly. Don't say that. It's actually not that bad. Although I held back, I used 30% of my strength. You didn't even faint when I slapped you. You were just lying on the ground. It's actually very powerful. Was this a compliment? Li Hao looked at him. This fatty who looked like a simple and honest old brother. Didn't have any other meaning in his words, right? A shield guard only smacked you to the ground with 30% of his strength and didn't kill you. Is that something to be proud of? At this time, Lu Long spoke, it's good that you can come back to your senses. I was still thinking that if you want to quit after this slap, I'll fulfill your wish. It seems that you're quite resilient. But I want to tell you that Qin Jian is only a martial master with 10 kills, and his main focus is defense. You must remember that any super is far superior to him. If you can't even avoid Qin Jian's attack, don't even think about escaping from the hands of supers. Of course, you've just joined us, so it's normal for you to be a little weaker. You're only a reserve team member now. Other than dealing with the guy in the self-immolation case, you'll be the bait. At other times, you'll mainly be strengthening yourself and helping us analyze and organize some data. He didn't expect Li Hao to come in handy now. There was no hope at all. After he finished speaking, Lu Long tightened his trench coat and looked at the others. He quickly said, Lu Yen, help this guy and figure out the situation first. Don't die in the next mission for no reason. Don't worry, boss. I'll take care of him. Lu Yen laughed heartily, while Li Hao wanted to say something but stopped. After thinking for a while, he decided to just let it be. At this moment, he was just a little brother in this demon hunting squad. Even Qin Jian, who was known as the weakest, could easily kill him. What else could he say? As for Dr. Yunyao, Li Hao didn't want to ask her any more questions. She looked kind and weak, but in fact, no one knew what was going on. Some people looked weak, but they were actually more terrifying. As for Lu Yen, he was at least more familiar with her and had at least spoken a few more words. Lu Yen looked at Li Hao with a smile. Little Li Hao, come to the office with your sister for a chat. It's too depressing here. Chapter 49. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Superpower Territory, 3, Translator. 549690339, Captain Lu, there's no hurry. Li Hao thought for a moment and said. Captain Lu. He looked at Lu Long. I'll allow you to call me boss. Lu Long's face was cold and arrogant, as if calling him boss was a great achievement. Li Hao didn't say anything. Since he was under the roof, he was the boss. Boss, Zhang Yuan's murderer probably already knows that we're investigating him last night because we made quite a commotion. I've studied the case records, and every rainy day might be the time for the other party to make a move. And it's been almost a year since the last incident. According to the time, the other party might make a move in a rainy day in a few days. I know. Lu Long nodded lightly. I'll naturally prepare for it. You're trying to say that you're probably the next target, and you're afraid, aren't you? Li Hao didn't say anything. Don't worry. Lu Long didn't explain too much. He only reminded Li Hao, your goal now is to understand more, to know more, and to better protect your life. As for the person behind the self-immolation case, we will find a way. Li Hao could only choose to trust them. Moreover, he didn't think that Lu Long would seek death. After saying that, Lu Long strode out. Wu Chao and Chen Jian quickly followed him. Yun Yao didn't follow him. Instead, she greeted Li Hao and the others before walking deeper into the basement. Lu Yen glanced at Yun Yao, and then saw Li Hao staring at Yun Yao. She suddenly felt a little amused and chuckled in a low voice. Little guy, is it stressful to chat with your sister? This one, don't keep thinking about her, she's a good sister. Captain Lu, you misunderstood. Noel.N. Lu Yen laughed again, misunderstanding or not, it's nothing. I'm just reminding you. A doctor. Not everyone could be a doctor. For us, it's useless to find a doctor for ordinary injuries. Besides, doctors are usually the most important people in a team. They have to take on tasks that no one else can do. Li Hao's interest was instantly piqued. He curiously asked, what? At this moment, Li Hao was interested in everything. Only by understanding everything quickly could he keep up with the others. Strip the mysterious energy. Lu Yen smiled as she spoke, but there was a hint of fear in her smile. Strip the mysterious energy. Li Hao was slightly dazed. The mysterious energy was something that normal people could not see. As for whether supers could see it. They might be able to see it, but the people in front of them were not. It was obvious that it was not easy to strip away the mysterious energy. And Yun Yao could do it. According to Lu Yen, Yun Yao was indeed an extremely important part of the team. They hunted supers to take away the mysterious energy. Without Yun Yao, there would be no meaning to the existence of this team. Even someone as unscrupulous as Lu Yen was afraid of her. Li Hao kept this in mind. Although this team was made up of ordinary people, in reality, they were not simple. None of those who could enter the team were easy to deal with. Let's go, stop looking. Lu Yen casually kicked Li Hao and chuckled. This woman, stay away from me. She's even more difficult to deal with than Boss, and you can even joke around with Boss, but don't talk to her. Li Hao obediently nodded. At this time, he was very honest. It was as if he had returned to a year ago when he first entered the important room. At that time, he was also very honest and didn't dare to say a word. He just treated himself as a little brother. I'll do whatever I'm told to do. A year later, he was still as honest as ever, but the entire computer room would say good things about him. No one would say he was bad, and that was enough. Following Lu Yen, the two of them returned to the office on the 6th floor. He had only stayed for half an hour, but when he came back up, the office, which had been terrifying a moment ago, gave Li Hao a sense of security. It was much better than what he had experienced downstairs. Bang! Bang! Lu Yen still slammed herself heavily into the chair without any regard for her image. She placed her legs on the table and gestured for Li Hao to sit anywhere he wanted. After Li Hao sat down, Lu Yen spoke in a casual tone. Boss asked me to give you a brief introduction. I don't know where to start. After all, I know everything. Why don't you ask me yourself? If there's anything you want to know, you can ask and I'll answer. Li Hao said seriously. He looked polite, but in order to understand more, he would not be polite. He was direct and immediately asked, Captain Lu, how do I become a super? 2 situations. Number 1, I was born with it. Lu Yen said directly. Some people are born with the ability to absorb mysterious energy. They don't need to cultivate or draw energy into their bodies. Their bodies have some mysterious energy foundation, which is naturally strengthened. These people are also known as Heavenly God Masters. Heavenly Priest. Li Hao remembered this name. Second, draw energy into the body. This was the conventional way of advancement, which was to absorb mysterious energy, use it for baptism, and activate the mysterious energy in their bodies. This kind of super was the mainstream and a step that most supers had to take. These people are also known as Starlight Masters in the entire superpower system. Mysterious powers, like the resplendent starlight, are absorbed by the supers, so they call themselves the starlight that shines upon the world. Starlight Master. Li Hao remembered it again. In other words, the entire superpower system was divided into two main categories due to the different methods of birth. Just these two? Lu Yen nodded. Strictly speaking, we're also considered the second type. We want to advance to become supers and starlight masters by introducing the mysterious energy. So, we're not considered the third type. Chapter 50. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Field of Superpowers. Point 4 Translator 549690339. After some thought, she said, but rumor has it that there's actually another way to advance. What method? Li Hao asked, a little interested. It's said that some powerful supernatural items can directly change one's foundation and allow one to advance into the supernatural realm. In other words, with the help of external objects, you can become a super. Li Hao's heart skipped a beat. A super item. Did the starry sky sword and the stone saber count? Lu Long should also know that these items were in his hands, but why? Did he not mention them? Was he secretly planning something, or did he really not care? In the next moment, Lu Yen continued, of course, this method is not mentioned because it's very difficult. First, the super item needed to be very powerful, and it was impossible for ordinary people to obtain it. Secondly, it was said that there were some restrictions to the super items. Not everyone could transform after obtaining them. I don't know the details, but boss might know, but you don't have to worry about it. Li Hao didn't say anything and just nodded. Changing the topic, Li Hao said, then what did boss say about matching superpowers and drawing energy into the body? What's the situation? Everyone's body is different and they are good at different things. There is not one superpower but many forms. For example, boss was good at attacking, but he didn't know what kind of attack he was good at. Was it lightning? Flame? Bingxue? In short, with the difference in attributes, he doesn't know what kind of power he has. At this time, if he draws on an incompatible mystic energy, it will be very difficult to unlock the superpower lock in his body. A superpower lock. It's what we call a super barrier. I don't know if it exists or not. The boss said that the night patrollers said that everyone had a lock that locked the mortals and superpowers. Only by opening this lock can you step into the supernatural realm. Li Hao understood. Unlock the super lock. This was what these mortals were after. This was all Li Hao could ask about supers. The next moment, he asked something more important, Captain Lu, if I want to become a super, is there any way? Draw energy into your body, but it's probably very difficult for you to get any mysterious energy right now unless you kill the murderer of the self-immolation case this time. Let's see if I can get you some. That depends on how much you've contributed. Lu Yen replied bluntly. It didn't mean that just because you were weak, you had a reason to be allocated more. Our demon hunting squad is very fair on this point. Whoever contributes the most will get the most. Li Hao nodded in understanding. Then, You want to say, do you have any way to become stronger? Lu Yen smiled and nodded, yes. Before becoming a superpower, if he could not directly enter the realm of superpowers, he would have to strengthen his martial arts abilities. You're too weak, but there are many ways to strengthen yourself. Li Hao raised his head in anticipation. First, you can continue to train hard. Lu Yen said after a moment of consideration. Second, a good martial arts technique. Your 5 birds technique is actually very good. Elder Yuan was a martial master with a cultivation of over 100 martial masters, so there's no need to say much about this. Moreover, the 5 birds technique is actually very comprehensive. It's good at attack, defense, and defense. Li Hao nodded. This was true. The 5 birds technique had 5 main categories, and he had only learned the ape technique. Third, external force. Lu Yen smiled. This external force is mainly the mysterious energy. If the mysterious energy can't help us unlock the superpower lock, it can help us strengthen our physique. Physique is the foundation. You have a good body and strong qualities. With a powerful cultivation technique, you will naturally be stronger. Mysterious energy. Li Hao was deep in thought. This. I do. Soaking in sword water. Of course, there's more than one type of external force. The mysterious energy is only one of them. In fact, there are many other external forces that can strengthen one. If that's the case, perhaps you can look for your teacher. Li Hao was startled. What did he mean? Lu Yen smiled happily and said playfully, as the dean of the archaeological department, I've explored countless archaeological ruins. The night patrolman did take most of the spoils, but in order to appease your teacher, he would leave some for him. And the archaeological ruins have the most treasures. Since you're so weak, you'll naturally benefit endlessly if your teacher gives you something good. Li Hao didn't say anything. How could he ask his teacher for a treasure? You must be joking. Ha ha ha, don't be shy. Not only your teacher, but our demon hunting squad also has such good stuff. The next moment, Lu Yen whispered, you won't lose out if you listen to me. As long as you perform well in front of boss and are worth investing in, boss won't be stingy. After killing a few supers, plus we are the law enforcement agency of the Silver City, we still have a small treasury. Li Hao blinked. He understood. After some consideration, Li Hao asked, Sister Lu, is there no clear sign of an increase in strength other than one's own feelings? For example, will there be any changes when you reach the 10th realm? Change. Lu Yen was taken aback for a moment before she quickly smiled and said, there is, but a martial master's strength still depends on actual combat and true ability. There's an actual combat training room at the back of the basement. You'll know when you go in. When you can pass the first level in there, you'll be 10 beheading. It means that you have the strength to kill a 10-man elite team. Training room. Li Hao noted it down again and became interested. He looked at Lu Yen again. Apart from these, was there no other benefits or help in joining the demon hunting squad? Lu Yen was taken aback by his stare. She seemed to understand what he meant and laughed a little after a while. Her smile was as bright as a flower. Little guy, you don't seem to be as honest as you appear to be. For justice. Li Hao smiled innocently and said softly. For justice. Lu Yen could no longer smile. After a long while, she shook her head and sighed. You're really good at applying what you learned. I can't give you anything else since you've just joined, but take as many firearms as you can in my office. Moreover, they're all legal. Right now, you might need these things more. Strengthening yourself really isn't something that can be done in a short time. I've been practicing martial arts for almost 20 years, but this is all I've got. Li Hao nodded. It's been 20 years. How old have you been practicing martial arts? The person before him looked to be around 30, but he couldn't be older than 40, right? Of course, Li Hao didn't dare to ask. These people practiced martial arts for 10 to 20 years, which was quite terrifying. Li Hao knew how difficult it was to practice martial arts. In fact, it was quite difficult. In the past 3 years, he said that he didn't put in much effort, but in fact, he practiced the ape art whenever he had time. 7 or 8 of the hanging rings at home had been broken, and many of them had fallen to the ground. Li Hao asked a few more questions, and time passed quickly. It was only when Lu Yen reminded him that it was almost time for dinner that Li Hao finally stopped his questioning. The more he understood, the more he yearned for it. If he couldn't enter the superpower realm quickly, it would be good for him to improve his martial arts and have more self-protection abilities. Soaking in sword water is a good thing. I have to get more and drink more. Li Hao felt a cool sensation on his chest. This might be the only way for him to quickly close the gap between him and the others.